But it's that family member thing, right, that we're talking about. Like, she struggled so much and she didn't do it perfectly. She made mistakes. She put me down sometimes. She shamed the addiction and she gave me tough love, but she never gave up on me. And she always believed in me and she always loved me. Nothing ever changed that.
So that was just a few words from Sonya Johnson on her mother and how she had handled her many relapses. In this episode, guys, we cover so much more than just relapse, family members, stigma, healthcare. Of course, we talked to Lisa being involved. It's a great episode, so stick around and check it out. The title sponsor for today's episode is the Yacht Treatment Center here in Krabi, Thailand, where I reside. It's where I started my healing journey here in Thailand. They are absolutely amazing. One of a kind facility. They treat trauma and trauma only, and they are really good at it, guys. So if you have trauma that might be holding you back, that might just be worth checking out. And you might be surprised at the cost relative to other treatment options in North America and Europe and Australia and the like. So you can learn more about them at the Yatra Treatment Center. That's YATRACNTRE.com. And here's the show. Hello, everybody, watchers, listeners, supporters of all kinds. Welcome to another episode of the Weekend Ramble on the Ashes to Awesome podcast. I'm your host, Chuck LaFlange. With me in virtual studio, halfway around the world, my lovely co-host, Dr. Lisa. How are you doing today, Lisa?
I'm doing really good. I'm doing good. It's we're having like a proper winter storm here at the moment.
I missed that. No, I don't. Not
Right?
at all. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. But no, I'm doing really good, thanks. Happy to be here.
Good stuff. And for returning guests, Sonya Johnson, just checking in from Florida, somewhere in the Orange State, I guess, or whatever you guys call it down there. But yeah. How you doing today, Sonya?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me. And as you're in a winter storm, Lisa, I am here in sunny Sarasota, Florida, and it is nice and warm. And actually, it's supposed to be winter, but we really don't experience winter around here. So
you wouldn't, I guess the time, like daylight time wouldn't be very different there either then, would it? Like it would change by well, daylight savings time would add some, but that's about it.
Yeah. The only difference is that it gets darker a little bit later or a little bit earlier based upon the daylight savings time. But I mean, as far as like the seasons changing, that doesn't ever happen. So
no, I guess not. It's just like here, the sun. So Thailand doesn't observe daylight savings time at all. Like it doesn't change their clocks.
Oh, wow.
Much like Saskatchewan and Arizona, the two jurisdictions in North America that don't, if you didn't know that, right? But so it only changes by like maybe half an hour at most, over the course of the year because we're so close to the equator, right? So, yeah. And as I was telling you guys pre-recording, she's about to get really hot here. Like 113 degrees is going to be the new norm for the summer here, which I can't even.
It's hot.
Like I can't even imagine that. I don't have AC anywhere in the house except my bedroom. So this little podcast studio is going to the bedroom. I can tell you that right now. There's no way. Typically, I try and work at night as I'm 12 hours off of you guys, give or take, depending on where in the country you are. But even that now, like it's still 30 degrees at night or 90 degrees at night here.
Crazy.
Like in the summer, it's going to be so hot.
So hot. Yeah.
And Sonya, what are the temperatures like there? I've actually never been to Florida. Like
So during the winter, we get down to sometimes we get down to 40 degrees, but for the most part, it stays between 60 and 70. And then in the summertime, we stay pretty consistent between 90 and 100. But, I was kind of sharing earlier, it's a different kind of heat because you have the Gulf breeze. We live by the Gulf of Mexico. So you have the Gulf breeze, but you also have the humidity. So it's like this heated blanket that has a little bit of a breeze with it.
Oh, that sounds glorious.
I was just going to say, you're talking Lisa's language now, right?
Right? Wow. I'm looking at what this is in Celsius. Okay. So it's winter of 18 degrees.
Yeah.
Summers of 35.
Yeah,
Sounds lovely.
not so bad, eh? Not so bad. Yeah.
No.
So, hey, listen, as we were chatting, we don't really have much of a plan going into this episode. And in my experience, those have been some of the best episodes I've done. So, what I did want to talk about, and again, because it's come up before, but I don't think it's something we can talk about too much, is when your loved one relapses, or when you relapse for that matter, because we do have that, we have both perspectives here, right? And I think that's one of the great things about having, the format that we do. and maybe I'll just open it up quickly about myself and kind of why I like to talk about it is um, I never started like I didn't have a bunch of relapses. I mean, I've been sober for 16 months, which means it's like 28 months ago would have been like my first crack ever at trying to get sober. And it was about a year of back and forth before it finally stuck. But my first, what I would consider my first real relapse, I was going to meetings every day that they were available, and they're available 5 out of 7 days in the city I was in. When I relapsed, the idea of going back and saying zero, and I was at 34 days, first time ever as an adult and as a teenager outside of when I was in juvie, I'd never gone 30 days sober ever. I was really proud of myself. When I relapsed, I could not go back. I just couldn't, right? I couldn't go back and admit to zero. To this day, I don't really keep track of my clean time. I do because I know the date. But at any given point, if you ask me how long I've been clean, I have to do the math. It's not a number that I keep in my head, right? So I guess that's my experience with relapse. And of course, through the platform now, I've experienced many other people's feelings and conversations, and especially the loved ones, when it comes to that. But Sonya, if you can jump in on now and just kind of what's your experience with it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the question I get asked the most. So I like that
Okay.
we're having this conversation because I get a lot of messages on my Facebook Messenger and the request. And what I see the most is, what do I do to help my family member? They've relapsed. I've tried everything and I just don't know how to help them. I get that more than anything else, more than I get from people. I get that message. And it's such a hard question to answer. But my experience with relapse, just kind of like what you just shared, this round of recovery for me was different. And I had tried recovery before, like I had gone to meetings before. I had pretended to be clean a couple times and gone to meetings just to please other people in my life. But this time was different for me because I had just, and it wasn't the rock bottom, right? Because I had been rock bottom after rock bottom after rock bottom after rock bottom. But this time was just different because I hate this term because it's so cliche. But they say, like, you're sick and tired of being sick and tired. Like, I was just so tired of what I was doing to myself and the way that my life had turned out that I was just sick of my own shit, right? I didn't know any other way to say it. But, I had tried other experiences in recovery, and I can relate to that feeling of having a couple days or a couple of weeks and then picking up and not wanting to face people. And I think, if anything, where the rooms of recovery get it wrong is the way they treat people who relapse. So, oftentimes people are afraid to come back, or they're afraid to tell somebody they picked up, because we have this thing in the rooms of recovery that when somebody picks up, everybody turns their back on them. And actually, it's very counterproductive, because when you relapse, you need help the most. Like, that's when you need the most support.
Absolutely.
And
I
so
think,
it's very
Sonia,
helpful.
if I can interrupt on that one specifically, like anything else, souls are different everywhere you go. I think in some meetings, yes. In other meetings, in my experience, actually, it was like a very like, keep, no, 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 come back, come back. They did kind of open up to that. So it very different that way, right?
Yeah.
But absolutely, it can be a problem. It can be a big problem. And
Hmm.
even if it isn't the way they treat you, it's for me, because that wasn't my experience. For me, it was the way everybody took so much pride in their clean time,
Right.
right? So even though you're not intentionally doing that to somebody, you're not like, oh, you're worse than me because you're at zero. The way that you strut because you're at 5 years or a year or 10 years can maybe be enough to have the same effect. And at the end of the day, right? Does
That's
that
a
make
really
sense?
good point. Yeah, I
Yeah.
totally
Yeah.
agree, because it's like a badge of honor, right? The whole key tags, I've got 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, and it continues to go up. And then you get the black and gold key tag. I'm not sure what it is in AA, but it's like 2 years or more, and,
Yeah.
and everything. And a lot of people, that can get to their head. And
Yeah.
sometimes they can take advantage of people with less time because of that. It's like a badge of honor. And you're right. And it's subconsciously, it stigmatizes the person that doesn't have as much clean time.
Absolutely it does. Absolutely. Lisa, of course, you being the mugglest of the muggles, as I fondly refer to you sometimes.
Yeah.
But you have had experience with, loved ones, and of course, working in addiction in the hospitals, right? What are your kind of initial thoughts on the whole thing?
I mean, I agree a lot about I think that the idea of counting days is like the idea of positive reinforcement, right? Is like if we celebrate it, it'll encourage people.
And it
But
does. Yes. Yeah.
yeah, but I agree that I think the fear is the other side of that, which is often not talked about. But that's why even, there was one point when my brother had first gone into treatment where I was like, my brother's been clean for this many days. And then I was like, you know what? It dawned on me one day that the amount of pressure that probably placed on him. And that's why I stopped doing it. Because again, clean days, great. Celebrate them if you want to. But I do recognize the risk in what happens when somebody then relapses. And I think that it builds up the shame.
Yeah.
And so, I see it a lot in patients. Like I'll have patients come into the emerge suicidal because they relapsed.
Absolutely.
And they'll come in,
Absolutely.
right?
Yes.
And it's like the level of catastrophizing and the intensity of the shame. And it's like the sense that everything they had accomplished is gone.
Yeah.
And so, one of the conversations that I have with patients regularly is that clean time is never lost.
No.
It's never lost. And if anything, to me, it's an opportunity to learn something in the journey that is sobriety, because it's not an endpoint destination, right? It's a journey. It's a lifelong journey. There'll be hard times, easy times, bumps, slips, whatever they might be. And so I always try to get a patient's focus less on I had this and I've lost it, and more on what did you learn? Like I've I've had a lot of patients, and again, I haven't lived this, but I've heard plenty of stories. But I've had patients say to me, like, relapses don't happen in an instant. There's, they might tell themselves in the moment that, they found themselves in a relapse and how did I get here? But with hindsight, they are able to recognize that this may have started weeks ago or months ago or days ago, where they started to make decisions, they started to justify, or they started to minimize, or they started to tell themselves lies. And
We
so
found
it's like,
resentments. That's
you know,
the resentments. Hey, Sonia, if I don't know if you can relate to that, but oof, they were
Yes.
like, that was the shit right there, right? Absolutely. Yeah. You give me a solid resentment and I'm done, right?
Right.
Relationship
yeah.
trouble. Oof.
Oh
Hey,
gosh.
that's the king of resentments. Like that's a straight road to relapse right there, right? Yeah.
It
Yeah.
is.
And
Yeah.
as a dealer, I can tell you the phone call, the text message. Oh, I just found out she's cheating on me. Oh, he left me. Oh, could you just hurry up and get here? And it was always the same shit, right? That's, yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Sonia, we kind of cut you off there, and I apologize for that. Kind of. What, when you get those messages, what is that do you have a typical response? And I hate to use that word because it might sound like it's like a canned thing, but I know it's not. It's
yeah, there
to
is
go to
sort of
maybe.
a typical response, but I do look at everybody's situation because everybody kind of has a different set of cards and they're all in different places in their own journey. And maybe, this is their first relapse or maybe they've never had recovery. So it can all be different. But I think the typical thing that I say the most is to be mindful of the words that we speak to people because I think we could very much speak life or death over people with our words. And the last thing that somebody that's in a relapse needs to hear is you're a POS, why don't you love me enough to stop using? Why don't you love your kids enough to stop using? Why can't you just get it right? Those are the things that actually make it a lot worse. And
Hell
instead
yeah,
of
they do.
saying, saying, I believe in you. I'm here for you when you're ready. I know where you can go. And having those kind of resources lined up, that's really my typical thing, to let somebody know that you love them, you believe in them, you know that they have this in them, and then have the resource ready when they're ready to get the help that they need, but never to speak death over them, because really that's what you're doing. You're speaking death over somebody when you're condemning them and telling
If they
them.
relapse, then keep loving them.
Yeah. Oops, I didn't mean
If
to
they
do
do it
that.
again, keep loving them. Because
That scared
the
me.
only thing I needed was somebody to believe in me.
Yeah.
Just for a goddamn second, like just somebody that thought I could do it, that I could be who I wanted to be. Like one person, that's what I needed. So instead of this, like, let's mitigate relapse. Why don't we just be that one person that believes in the face of 15, 20 relapses, 10 treatment centers? What if you're that one person that is like, you know what? And what if it doesn't work, and they still pass because of a drug poisoning? And at least you get to know two things: A, their suffering is over, and B, you did everything you could to love that person. And when they left, you can guarantee one of the last thoughts they had was that person loved me.
Hey listeners, let's take a moment to talk about something crucial: carrying naloxone. This life-saving medication can reverse an opioid overdose in minutes. You might think, I don't need it, I'm not around opioids, but the truth is you'll never know when you'll be in a situation where you could save a life. It's easy to use, and many places offer it for free or at a low cost. So let's be prepared and look out for each other. Remember, you might not plan on being around opioid use, but you never know when it'll be around you, and you could save the life of somebody that is loved. This is Jared Blaine with the Blacklist Podcast, and remember, you are loved.
I love that so much.
Right? Isn't that powerful? Right?
Sometimes it just takes that one person to believe in you, because you don't believe in yourself. Nobody else believes in you. You feel like you're a total failure. And just having that one person that sees something in you that you can't see in yourself makes all the difference in the world.
And I find I see that with patients where they'll come in again in this catastrophic, suicidal, hopeless sort of state. And we'll have a conversation, and I don't catastrophize it. And it's like, at some point, I think you're going to be able to learn something that you can use in the future. But it's like, okay, so what are we going to do to get you back on track? And having this like can-do approach, and we're here, and you've come, you want help, we're going to help you, we're going to get you back on. And the most common reaction I'll have from patients is they'll just start to cry. And for me, it just speaks to exactly what you're describing, right? Is that I think it just lifts this load, and they just feel like somebody believes that they're still worth it,
Right.
but you just see the wall crumble, and it's just, almost, I think, I don't know what the right word is, but it's like a release or a relief, and I think it's very much that they look at the team of people I work with going, okay, you guys aren't going to give up on me. Like, you're actually going to still help me. And that communicates to them that they're worth it.
Exactly. Yeah. When I was in jail, I had this one woman, and I had shared in her class that I would never be anything but a failure. I was 34 years old. I never did anything right in my entire life, and I was destined to be a failure or a loser or whatever you call that. And she believed in me. And because she believed in me, I didn't believe in me yet, but I believed that she believed in me. And so I borrowed some of her hope for me, which gave me just enough strength to try to get it right. That woman is still like a big part of my life today. And I credit her for planting that seed that gave me the hope and strength to be the person that I am today. And now I get to give that back to other people.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I love that. I
Yeah.
love that term, Sonya. I borrowed some of her hope. I just, I see a meme coming on.
But, for me, like, obviously not having walked in the shoes of somebody that has been on the suffering end of this, like, I know that I have gotten the privilege of being that person. And I just am like in that story, there's a lot of people who will listen to that story and they'll relate to Sonya's side of that. And I can relate entirely to that other woman and think, how fucking lucky is she, or am I at times, to get to be that person to somebody? Like, I just, you know what I mean? Like,
Right.
how privileged a life do I live that I get to do shit like that? Like, it blows my mind.
And here's the thing, Lisa, is that Sonya, myself, other content creators, anybody who's out there trying to do their thing, whether it's in a room to one person or whether it's, on the internet to 300,000, it doesn't. That's a sense of purpose there. That there's a sense of something there that is not. Yeah, it's great for the other person, but selfishly, fuck yeah. Right?
Yeah.
I know.
I
Right?
mean, you
Like,
can get into the whole debate, do humans do anything altruistically, really, ever?
Well, yeah, you're going to feel good because you did something good for somebody, right? And
Yeah.
I'll take
And
that.
that's good. Why not?
I'll take your ego as a like with roses if that's what's going to help people like get their shit together, right? Like, and to help lead a better life.
Yeah.
So whatever.
Yeah.
Right?
And it makes me think of there's a lady that I have in the hospital right now who is actually going to be discharged this coming week. We just found out on Friday that she's been accepted into a housing program. She's been in hospital with us for 9 months.
Wow.
So this is a lady she does have like a primary mental illness, but she has severe polysubstance use disorder. And no word of a lie, I've read multiple discharge summaries where there's no way to spin it except people would give up on her. So she would be in the hospital and she would AWOL from hospital. She would go use drugs. She would get brought back by police in a really agitated state because she was intoxicated. And on multiple occasions, like they would say, you know what, she just keeps AWOLing, discharge. And this woman, I would say for the first 3 months I had this woman in hospital, I had to pep talk myself every damn day to go and meet with her. Like, I'm not kidding you. Like, she was nasty to me. Like, she would swear at me and call me names and storm out of rooms, and it was such a challenge. And now she's like sweet as peaches. She's been sober for 9.5 months. She has passes. She has 4 hours every day where she goes out of the hospital when she wants.
So it's not like she hasn't had opportunities.
Oh, no.
Right?
No,
Okay.
she goes out every
Yeah.
day now and she's maintaining her sobriety. But what made me think about it is that she has been, from what I can gather, she's been sick from a mental health perspective and using substances for at least 10 years where she had not been ever stabilized. She'd lost contact with her family. She has 5 children. She has grandchildren, and she still has not reached out to them, which is a whole other conversation. But she has very much like taken on the hospital team as her family. Like, she will talk about us like we're her family. Like, she doesn't want to let us down, as if, like, she's speaking about her spouse or her parent or her child. And yeah, like, we've very much become like family to her. And now she's going to leave.
That's amazing.
My little birdie.
that transformation, and I think back to, the few times I did detox, and I ran through social detox. In 2 weeks, the growth you see from somebody who's coming in off it raw and get some programming and, the things that you see that person, like, you get to see that real person. At least we've talked about that, how it's, what you see in the emergency room is not the real person, right? And you get to see a glimmer of that person. I can't imagine over the course of 9 months what that looks like. That must feel just amazing, right? And you've heard me talk about it, validation of purpose, right? And that must be the ultimate validation of purpose. Right?
Oh, it's crazy. And again, like, but to say that it's all altruistic that's bullshit. Like, like, it feels amazing. Like, I feel amazing looking at this person and going, I played a role in that. I mean, I'll never let patients tell me that I did things because I'm like, I can't do it. Like, you have to do it. But to be a part of it, to be a part of somebody's journey and to see them transform in that way, That's incredibly rewarding. Like, I don't know that there's anything that would ever be more rewarding in life than seeing somebody become healthy and get their life back. Like, it's crazy,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know? Yeah.
Yeah. I think that really speaks to what kind of person you are, though, because there's so many people that work on the front lines, especially in emergency rooms, especially EMT workers, police officers, people that are literally out there on the front lines and they see the darkest of people when they are in their worst moments. But you do this every day and you still have this spirit where you just want to help people. And it does serve you to serve them and to see that change in them. But it does speak to a lot of who you are as a person because typically, like, people become jaded when they're in that profession for so long because they see so much. But to see your face light up when you talk about this woman, like, I love that so much. And also, I
Well,
think it
thank you.
speaks to that woman too, because it sounds to me like she has been through system after system after system, or institution after institution after institution, and everybody's given up on her, including her family, including her children. And everywhere she's gone, people have said, "You're too far gone. We can't help you.
Hmm.
You're too messed up.
Yep.
We can't help you." But you and whoever you work with in this amazing emergency department gave this woman a chance, and you did not give up on her. And
Hmm.
she found her belief in herself because you guys believed in her first. And you were patient enough with her to give her that time, right? Because it took 3 months of her being nasty because she thought she was going to get what she always got. But she
Yep.
didn't. You were patient and you waited and you loved her. And that, to me, that woman has the potential to help tons of people with that experience.
Right.
Totally.
Right. Right.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Mm.
Just what you're saying there, Sonia, uh, about frontline workers. I was in a situation. We didn't have Narcan. Somebody had overdosed. I had to give her CPR for forever. It's what it felt like, as it tends to, right?
It's
a
not
long
easy to
time.
give CPR.
No, and like even 10 minutes of it, right? Because it's not
Yeah.
just the physical, it's you're in raw panic the entire, it's like, it's 100% adrenaline.
Adrenaline.
Yeah.
Yeah. And me typically, even in my craziest days, for me to spend time with people I didn't care about wasn't something that I really did. So if I was around somebody who was overdosing, that's somebody I genuinely cared about, and they're dying, and it's like
Yeah.
the worst feeling, right? And paramedics showed up, Narcan her 2 or 3 times. On the way out the door, does the paramedic say, "We'll see you later"? And I could have punched him.
Yeah.
I was so disgusted with it, but hindsight, you have to wonder. And of course, I become more and more, as I become more and more informed of it, specifically being trauma informed, more and more trauma informed as my journey continues here. You have to imagine, how many times has he seen that person later? How easy is it for that person to get there? Maybe you should be in a different line of work, or maybe there should be some supports out there for people like you that where apathy isn't a break, where it's become the thing, right? If you're going to say nasty things like that to somebody on the way out the door, but apathetic things at
Exactly.
best, maybe nasty is not the right word, but we know we need supports for people, for frontline workers, for people like yourself, Lisa. And we've talked about apathy quite a bit, with Ryan as well. And, just a few hours ago, Casey Jordan from F Around and Recover. I was talking to him. He's out in Vegas right now. By the way, folks, if you're paying attention, go check out F Around and Recover. He's out there doing some crazy things with people out on the streets, and he's doing it all with no money. Like, he needs
That's
some help out there.
awesome.
He needs gas money, right? Like, he had $18 when I spoke to him last.
Wow.
But he's out there on the street, and he's talking to people, he's communicating with people. He is fucking walking the walk right now in the biggest way. So check him out.
Amazing.
But he had gotten to it. He was like, "Man, these people just need a break." Like, it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, they do. Yeah, they do. And they need someone to believe in them. And I guess where I was going with this, because I kind of went on a tangent there, was, I had a chat with him about, you got to be careful, man, because like the heaviness can get to you in a big, big way. right? Right now, he's been talking into a camera for the last year and a half or whatever that he's had his platform. He's been talking into a camera, saying some really inspiring and some funny stuff, and great man. But and some messages, but he hasn't been living it, and he hasn't been talking to people every day, and you can see it wearing on him now, right? And it's that, and I, from my own experience, it's why we don't do 6 episodes a week. Well, that, and I'm human, but like when I was doing 6 episodes a week, the heaviness of it was just, it was unbearable at times, right? Because we were doing some pretty heavy stuff with a couple days of the week anyway. But so I guess that's the other part of it too, is there needs to be some supports for people that are, or I don't know. You can either one of you can speak to that.
No,
Yeah.
I agree with you completely. And I'm sure you guys probably do know this, but what I do professionally is work with parents who've lost their children, where the system separates them from their kids. And
Yes.
I work as a peer. And so by the time that I meet
Perfect
these
example.
parents,
Right.
they are, everybody's given up on them. And there's this whole stigma, like everybody thinks that they're saving these children from their wicked and horrible parents. But what's really happening, and there is that 10%, right, that these egregious things happen to the children. But for 90%, I would say even 95, honestly, it's people that are struggling with addiction or mental health challenges or victims of domestic violence. It is people who have been through trauma and abuse, incarceration, like they've been through stuff and they're currently navigating through challenges. And everybody just wants to put them through more stuff, and it's very hard, and I see it, and I've been that parent too. So there's also that element of it where people kind of see me that way sometimes too. Even though I work in the field professionally, there's that stigma that's still there. But I think what you're referring to is like vicarious trauma or secondary trauma, and you do experience that. And sometimes, like when you're giving and giving and giving, and you're experiencing so much trauma and like just bad injustices and things that happen around you, like it can be really hard sometimes. And I think you're right that we need to do better to support those people that are out there on the front lines. They need to be supported. They need to be in it for the right reasons. Those two things go together.
Fair enough. Well said.
In the hospital, we do sometimes have to contact Child and Family Services.
Of course.
And I will say that I can't imagine what that job must be like. Like, I can't imagine having to, the number of times they must witness neglected children or abused children, the number of times they're needing to go into these home environments and actually remove children. And there's one thing, and I've said this many times on the show, Sonya, but ever since I had a child of my own, it just did something to me. Like, I used to think about doing pediatric work, and I've worked at the children's hospital, and I've worked with shaken babies, and I've seen sick babies, and I used to be able to do it. And then I had my daughter, and now if I so much as hear a baby crying in the hospital, I'm just like, somebody fix this. Like, I can't handle it. So I'm not suggesting it's an easy job, but I think that the average person out there would get that, would agree with the fact that doing child and family services work must be really, really difficult. Sadly, I will say that I have also seen the other side, where I have seen parents who do have mental illness, who do have addiction struggles, who are doing all the things, and CFS sometimes feels against them.
Right.
I've had cases where my social worker, who we always say we must have on the show someday, and he's incredible, where he's like, I'm going to go to the meeting with them, even though he's not expected to, because he had, worked with them enough to recognize that this worker looked like they were looking for any opportunity to pull these kids or to not let them see their kids. And the social worker will go and sit in on these meetings because it's just like, no, like I've had worked on cases where I've been explicit. I do not think this woman is a danger to her children. And I actually think that what's being done is worse for her mental health. Like she might need support, and maybe she needs supervision for a period of time or whatever. But it's like to take children away, it's like you better damn well know that that child is at risk with that parent, because it's not good for the child and it's not good for the parent.
No, certainly not.
You
There's a,
know?
there's a program in Regina, and I wish I could remember the name of it. And this is in Regina, Canada. There, it's a living, like a supervised living facility. They've got a bunch of 2 or 3 bedroom apartments where you can go live with your kids while you're
That's
going through
awesome.
treatment,
That's
right?
awesome.
That it was like, oh my God. And at the time, even then, and I was in it, when I had heard about this, but it's like, oh, that makes just so much sense. This person, the one thing that people have is their kids, and you want to take that away, you're going to give them that trauma and tell them to get clean, right? You're going to give them the
Exactly.
one thing that they're holding on to, right? And so what a wonderful service that is, and I hope that maybe that gets expanded. And who knows? I haven't talked about it or been informed about anything that's going on there in a long time, but
Yeah. And the thing is,
one
I
of the
don't think
tools in the
any,
toolbox. Sorry, Lisa. Go
I
ahead.
don't think, I don't think anybody would challenge or question that child safety is number one.
Of
Like,
course.
obviously, right? Like that's for sure. But I do think that programs that allow people to get help and get well and get support while remaining connected to their children, that's what needs to happen. Like, I don't have a mental health diagnosis and I don't have struggles with addiction. If someone came in and took my child from me, you would need to put me in a locked rubber room,
Exactly.
Yeah.
no doubt.
No
You
kidding.
know?
Kidding.
So I can't imagine
And Lisa,
taking.
let's be honest, Lisa, they'd be back pretty quick. They'd be like, "Nope, this one's a firecracker. You're gonna have her." No.
No, you would be considered combative or violent. When parents
I would.
react, they automatically get stigmatized because of their reactions. And so it's ridiculous.
Right.
Like I had a case where a woman on labor and delivery, she was asking for, she'd had a premature child and they were wanting to do things. And I think she literally had convinced herself that what a good mom would do is ask for second opinions, is asked to speak to the doctor. And so because she wasn't blindly just saying yes to everything that was being put in front of her by nurses, they literally certified her and sent her to a psych unit. And like, she came to me and I remember her being on the unit and I was like, you know what? She's got some personality. Like, she's someone who's going to challenge things, someone who maybe doesn't love authority. But I saw nothing. I was like, this woman is not depressed. She's not manic. She's not psychotic. She doesn't do drugs. This is just a woman with a bit of a difficult personality who thought she was doing the right thing by her child to say, well, I would like a second opinion on that before you do that to my baby. And they sent her to a psych unit. Like,
Wow.
and then she did. When they started to put barriers between her being with the baby on labor and delivery before they certified her and sent her to a psych unit, she started to get agitated and verbally aggressive. And this was all getting documented. And I'm like, you wouldn't let her see her newborn baby.
Right.
Like, some of this is normal behavior.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's like gaslighting 101 right there, right?
Exactly.
It's like the worst kind. I shouldn't laugh because it's not funny, but
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
It kind of makes me think of being trauma informed, like you had said a moment ago. And I think a lot of it has to do with people receiving the right training and learning how to be trauma informed, because that is a normal reaction. And when we deal with people differently, we get better outcomes. So I think it does have a lot to do with support and learning things, maybe from people that have lived experience. When people are in their education, right? Maybe they need to hear from people like us. If they're going to serve us, they should hear from us, right? Like, they should know who they're serving instead of just hearing it out of a textbook, because you don't always get a clear picture like that.
There's a question, Lisa. To become a psychiatrist, 10 years school, something like that?
Yep.
10 years of learning before you're an
Wow.
accredited psychiatrist?
Yeah.
At any point, did you speak to anybody with lived experience?
In my education, you mean?
Yes.
Or
Yes.
so, I mean, yes, because, the way it was, and I don't know how every medical school works, but in Calgary, from month one of medical school, so I mean, you're not a resident at that point. In medical school, we were working with patients. We were in the hospital with preceptors, seeing patients, and particularly like early days, I have to say that one of the things our preceptors often, because I mean, say we're in cardiology, like we're not going to go in and, come up with some cardiac diagnosis with 1 month of medical school. But we were often encouraged to speak to the patient, learn about the patient, hear the patient's story. So I do think that that was quite encouraged. But I still feel like a lot of people who go to medical school are, well, maybe all, like, you're privileged.
Right.
You're privileged.
Just to get there. I mean, yeah, there's some barriers that
You
other
know?
people would not be able to
Right?
Right.
right? Yeah.
I mean, the amount of education you need just to get into medical school in Canada,
Yeah.
you have to already be privileged. And there's a lot of people I went to medical school with who both of their parents were physicians. And I think one of the things that I did see repeatedly, and we've talked about this before, is, as medical students, they would sit there with a patient hearing the story, and you would hear them say, "Oh, I understand." And I remember
they
it being a
don't.
repeat conversation where I was like, can you just stop saying that? Because you don't understand. We do not and I'm part of that, we do not understand. We don't understand what it's like to just be told you have ALS. We don't understand what it's like to be homeless. We don't understand. And so that was something that I saw, despite us, yes, being exposed to patients and getting to hear direct stories, just still that ignorance around how little we actually understand what it's like to be in the patient's shoes.
I have a
kidding.
follow-up question to that. So when you were out, and I love that they actually put you out there and they encourage you to hear patient stories. How was the culture, referring to the person that was training you or supervising you, or the, on-call physician that you were observing? How was their attitude towards those patients as you're hearing their stories?
Specific to addiction kind of thing? Is that what we're, or just
in general?
Yeah, just in general. I mean, did you notice the stigma, or were they, subconsciously teaching you those things as you're learning, you were also hearing on the back end?
I love that. I guess things I noticed were that older physicians were more, maybe we could use the word jaded.
Mm-hmm.
And it's sort of, they'd heard the story so many times that there was a loss of sensitivity sometimes in older physicians. Not always. There's older physicians popping in my head right now who were super compassionate, and it always stood out to me. But I would say that older physicians, I saw that. Another thing that I noticed a lot was physicians being so overstretched and overworked. And it would come across to me as insensitivity, but I also recognized it's because they had this list of 100 things they still had to do that day. And that took away from their ability to be present with people, because it's just we got to go, we got to go, we got to go. And so how much can you really sit and listen to somebody when you have 100 things that you need to do? It's not it'll be good if I can do all these things today. It's no, I need to do all these things today. So I think, sometimes older docs a little bit more jaded, and I think also just really recognizing how overstretched people are. Even now, I'll have family or friends who will text me and be like, I've been in the emergency department for 8 hours and I'm still waiting. And I'm like, you know what? It sucks, but I promise you, those emerge docs are run off their feet. They're not sitting in the back room having coffee, shooting the shit about what they did on Friday night. They don't stop. And so, just people quite overworked. And I think that has an impact on the care patients get.
That's a systematic thing. That day, Lisa, that I sat in your emergency room with, my friends there and trying to get somebody help. We were there for 8 hours or something like that by the time we, left. Mm-hmm. And those circumstances were different. Anyway, we watched that emergency room fill up and empty. I don't even know. I gotta say once an hour.
Yeah.
It would
crazy.
fill up and empty out, fill up and empty. It was this, holy shit, just the sheer Like the number of people that are being cycled through there
Yeah.
is crazy. And
Yeah.
kudos to the people that are working it, and shit to the system that allows for something where you have to run that many people through like cattle just to
Yeah.
get to the next person and try and help them. Like how frustrating that must be for everybody involved, right?
Yeah.
Everybody involved.
And again, that was one of the reasons that I picked the discipline I picked. Because, I mean, you can work in addiction through doing, like Dr. Ghosh, who's been on the show, he's an internist. Dr. Scott, who's been on the show, is an emergency physician. I'm trying to think. We were thinking of having Dr. Van on. I think she's a family doctor by training, but it's like you can do addictions work through so many different avenues of medicine. But for me, what sets psychiatry apart is that aside from when I am in the emerge, which is equally crazy for us as it is the emerge docs, but on the unit, when patients are my patients and they're assigned to the unit that I work on, like I get time, like I have patients who are not allowed outside, and when I visit with them, we'll go and walk laps around the hospital, and that's how we talk. And so it's like I actually get time to just sit with patients and hear their stories day after day. And you don't get that in other specialties.
No,
you
I
know?
suppose you would. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Right, isn't it though?
Yeah, very
Isn't it?
lucky.
Yeah.
I gotta say, I'm so fortunate that you reached out the day you did, Lisa. Right? Like
We're
it's
coming
just
up on a year.
Yeah, we are. Hey,
It was
yeah.
March something that
How
I
did
was.
you guys meet? Can I hear the story real quick?
Yeah,
Yeah.
of course.
Okay.
So one of my guests on the show, Devin McGuire, who runs 3 recovery houses in Lower Mainland, BC, Canada. So, and Sonya, for your reference, he's in the trenches out there. He's by east side, downtown east side. It's called Vancouver,
Okay.
which is Skid Row in Canada. And I think actually by most metrics, it might be the worst city in Canada, right? There's been
In
some
Canada
sort of,
for sure, yeah.
Yeah,
And I think it's
in
in
North
North
America,
America, it's probably
way
top
up there.
2,
Yeah,
maybe 3
it's-
next to
it's
San
crazy.
Fran, and
it's
really rough.
crazy where he's at. And so he came on the show, and he's still one of my favorite guests I've ever had. He said some controversial shit. We had to have him back on because he got hate mail and hate phone calls from some of the things he had said, and it was crazy.
Yeah.
As a harm reduction person, you might have been in that club, but
yeah.
there's a whole story there. At that point, how do I say this? So there had been some attachment with Lisa and through her story and whatever. At least I don't want to say what, I could be
No, it's
careful when I
fine.
say that,
I mean,
right?
yeah,
Oh, okay.
it's before,
Okay,
but so
yeah,
he is an interventionist, and he actually assisted, and it wasn't truly an intervention at that point. It was an intervention from 4 years ago, and then 4 years later, my brother reached out to the interventionist saying, "I'd like to get some help," and a decision was made with my brother's input to go to a treatment center in Thailand. But of course, he's so unwell at the moment that they don't send them on the plane to Thailand alone, and so they are escorted. And Devin was the interventionist who took my brother to Thailand. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, Devin, we had this great conversation. Devin had told Lisa about it, about the podcast. She listened to that episode, messaged me, I think the same day or maybe the next day, whatever it was.
Yeah.
There. 3 days later, Lisa came on the Weekend Ramble with us and has been a part of the show ever since.
Never went away. Now he can't get rid of me.
What was
This is
crazy
like-
about that, though, Sonya, extra crazy about that, is we both were in Calgary.
Yeah.
At this point, I'm living in Calgary, so is she, right? It still took us like 6 months to meet or something like that, right? But,
Yeah.
right? Living, 10, 15 minutes apart from each other, I guess. But yeah, right? So
That's so cool. It was like meant to be that you guys connected, and now here you are
Right.
all the
Yeah.
way across the world in Thailand, right?
I know.
yeah,
That's
right.
awesome.
It is. It's nuts. It's nuts. And every week, more than every week, quite often daily, I think about how all that's played out in my relationship with Lisa, and I'm truly
Yeah.
thankful for it. Right? Yeah.
Same.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
Same.
Yeah. It's been a blessing.
One thing, because we started out kind of talking about like people relapsing. And, I kind of spoke to it from like my role at the hospital. But there's that other angle that I've experienced, which is being the family member of somebody who has relapsed, right? And one of the things that I wanted to say is that I also think like education for families is so key. Because
Yes.
I remember 20 something years ago, the first time my brother relapsed, I had such catastrophic views of that. Like, I felt so defeated, and it was just like the
Did
world
you
just crashed.
did you feel betrayed?
Um,
Did you take it personally, I guess is what I'm asking.
no,
That's good.
no.
You must have had some education already because I've noticed a lot of people take it personally.
Absolutely, they do. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think for
Can't you
me,
just love me enough? Right.
Right.
Yeah. That whole
yeah,
mentality.
I think for me, like, I just saw how sick he was, you know, um, like I had told the story before, but he had gone into a detox center, and I remembered thinking, problem solved. He's in detox. We're going to pick him up in 3 days. We're going to take him to a treatment center. We're done. And that's like speaking muggle of the muggles. Like, you should have met me 25 years ago. Like,
I can
like I
only
just,
imagine.
like, I was like, this is the answer to the problem. We're done.
He's
And
cured.
yeah. And then
Hmm.
he had called the dealer from detox, and the dealer picked him up
Yeah.
at the detox center with a crack pipe loaded
Mhm.
and was like, "Oh man, don't go in there. Like, they'll screw you up, like." And then he went back, and then my boyfriend at the time, him and I sat outside the detox for the next 5 days in the parking lot so he wouldn't leave. And I remember he would call me up and he would swear at me and yell at me and spit venom at me, and then 10 minutes later break down. And so I think the reason I never took it personally is like that for me was just this like smack in the face of his suffering. Because I was just like, oh my gosh, like what is happening, And I think sort of being eyes wide open and seeing him sick and seeing the internal struggle, I was like, this ain't about me. Like, this is not, he's not doing this to me. Um, but I will say that, like, and to speak to the fact that I think families educating themselves is so important. Because in those early days, like, I don't think I ever got mad at him, but I definitely had that catastrophic experience with the relapse.
Yeah.
And then I think by learning and realizing that it's a relapsing, remitting illness, that sober time is not lost, that there's things to be learned through relapse. I feel sad for him when he has relapses because I recognize that that comes with the struggle of trying to climb out again. Um, but I do think families approach it differently the more they understand.
Yeah, they do. They do. Which it's the entire premise with the show, right? And as we've talked about many times, but I figured out early on that when I was in active addiction, there was no way I was turning it into a podcast every week. Let's be honest.
Right. Yeah.
I was too busy trying to survive to get high to go whatever. Right.
Right.
That was not
Hiding
happening.
under a rock somewhere,
Yeah.
hustling or
But yeah, hustling, always hustling, grinding, always on the grind, right? But the families are in desperate search of resources, and I feel there's many great recovery podcasts out there, and I don't mean to take away from that at all, but I feel the best way that I could help was to help educate some families and
Yeah.
to give them some resource and something to pay attention to, because in turn we are helping the people that are suffering by doing that.
yeah.
And even for me, Chris,
No.
I've said this before, but as somebody who has had a loved one for 20 something years struggle with addiction, who has done a lot of research trying to find him help. Like, I've spent a lot of time on my computer looking up programs and resources and all the rest of it. There are so many resources that I've learned about in Canada through this podcast that I've never heard of before. And, like, you know what I mean? Like, it still blows my mind because I think I've done some pretty extensive searching to try to find help.
Yeah.
And there's so many programs that you've, had on this podcast to talk about support that exists. that I think it's necessary. It's so hard for families to try to find help and support, and sometimes families are afraid to ask. Like families feel stigma too, you know?
Oof. Oh, fuck, we
And
could do another 10 episodes. We've done a
Yeah.
couple on that, but we could do a whole, and we probably will. Now that you said it, Lisa, I think that'll be coming up again real soon, right? But,
yeah,
yeah, the stigma that's faced by the families, right? Yeah.
yeah, which is so sad. And I mean, no more sad than someone with addiction suffering with stigma. But yeah, it's just crazy to think that you have a loved one with an illness and you're afraid to talk about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I saw this meme once that said drugs are ruining my life and I'm not even the one using them. And that just speaks so much to that. And I love that this podcast is about family members because they don't get the support. I mean, there's all kinds of resources and treatment centers and detoxes for people that are struggling with addiction. And there is limited support for family members of people who are struggling with
At best,
addiction.
I would venture to say, Sonia, that the math is kind of reversed, and not that it should change. Not that we should have less of anything, but we certainly need more on the family side. We say often here, if for every person who struggles with addiction, there is 10, it's an arbitrary number. I pull out of the top of my head, and let's be honest, it's way low. There's 10
Yeah.
people that are affected by that, right?
Absolutely.
So 10% of the people that are affected are getting 90% of the resources, right? Because there's very little resources for those 10 people, right? So
Yeah.
the math is almost reversed. And again, I don't think that we should be taking away from the people that are struggling. I think that there should be more for the people that for their loved ones, right? That's important to qualify that statement with, right? But,
And I think that, as family members, we don't necessarily know what it's like to live in the shoes of our loved one who suffers. But I do remember a conversation I had with my brother, and this was the very first time he was ever in treatment. So you're going like back many, many years, and he was still quite young. But I remember saying to him, hopefully not in some sort of an angry, punitive way, but I said to him, like, you also don't know what it's like to be your sister. You don't know what it's like to have a sibling suffering and sick and to sit there and be terrified that you're going to die and to feel like there's not a damn thing I can do about it.
yeah.
Like, but cross my fingers, I guess. Like, I mean, yeah, it's people don't know what it's like to be the mother of, the father of, the sister of, the spouse of, the child of, unless they've lived that too.
My mom has described it as her getting to know me now that I'm in recovery is like getting to know a new person. We don't come back the same. It's like sending somebody to war, and when they come back, they are not the same person anymore.
And nor to our loved ones, our parents,
Right.
our
True.
that they'll never be the same. My mother, who Sonia, and I don't know if she's a big part of. She's the inspiration to You Are Loved, and I think I've probably told you about that.
Yeah.
She is a huge part of the show. She will never be the same,
Right.
right? Never, right? The bar has moved, to say the least. Like things are very different now, and for the better. I mean, Mom, what's funny, Lisa? I've been kind of sick for the last 24 hours. So rather than work on new content, I was going back to some of the episodes, and I was watching that last one that Mom did with us. And it was just like, oh, this is so cool. I just love that she's a part of this. Sonia, she's made herself available to, I don't even know how many people now, but like so many mothers, right? And it's just, so our relationship now, like you said, Sonia, is yours with your mom is different than ever. And my mom and I, it's like we're doing this together. You know what I mean, right? So she's working on the You Are Love stickers for me, and right. I can't wait to
And
get
I
those
think
done.
there's,
Yeah, right.
you can look at true for everybody, true for the person suffering with addiction, true for the family members. You can say that, well, you don't know what it's like to be me, but there's a gift in it too, right? Like, there's no way if you erase 25 years of my life and my brother never suffers with addiction, there is no way that I am the person I am today with the empathy that I feel today, the desire to help people like I do. Like, do you know what I
Yeah,
mean? So
100%. Yeah, yeah.
there's, there can be good that comes from it.
Yeah.
And I agree. And I guess, Lisa, that's kind of what I was saying there, is that 100% there is, right? Like, look at mom and I. My mom is a force. When, like, on anything she does, she is a force. I could tell you stories. Everything she ever touches is done to, like, y'all better watch the fuck out now, right? Like, she is crazy, when she gets onto something. And so now I think, and I, myself as well, I've got some, there's a skill set there where I get my teeth into something. I'm pretty good with it. And it's like, mom and I could take over the world together if that's what, and we're directing that energy together into this thing. And it just makes my heart happy. Right. And that couldn't have happened without the years of shit that led up to it. Right. So, yeah.
Sonya, can I ask you a question? So you sort of at one point today talked about the advice you give to people around what not to say, right? That just kind of promotes the shaming. And I love the way you described it, like speaking death over somebody. But what are things that, because again, I think for family members who might be watching, who are newer to the struggle, who don't necessarily have tons of support or education, like what are the things that you encourage them to say to people?
I think the most important thing that somebody needs to know is that you still love them and that you still see them as a person, as a human, because we feel when we're out there like we're less than human, like we're the scum of the earth. And so if you speak to the person that's inside of them, the person that I know and love, and let them know that you believe in them and that you are going to support them on this journey when they are ready to get help, you're going to be there for them the whole way as their biggest cheerleader. And you just know that just letting them borrow that hope, right? Like we had kind of talked about before, giving them the hope that you believe in them and that you have hope for them. You haven't given up on them. Nothing that they could ever do is going to change the way that you love them. That's always going to be there. No matter how low they feel, you love them, you support them, you believe in them, and you have not given up on them. I think that in itself is very powerful for a person struggling to hear.
Sonya, have you seen another content creator, Brandy Mack? Have you seen her?
Yeah.
Holy shit, hey? Holy shit, this woman. Oh, Lisa, you got to see. I shared a video to the page the other day. No, it was a while back now. She's amazing. She's just, I've been reaching out to her, trying to get her attention to come on the show. But she is like, holy shit, is she ever cool, eh? Right?
Yes.
I just listened to her and go, oh my God. Right? Like, you're my people. Right?
Really?
Yes.
Yeah. She's absolutely amazing. Yeah.
But what made you just think of that now?
She's a mother of somebody, her daughter who suffers or has suffered, whichever. And her entire message is, this healthy balance between boundaries and loving, and basic needs. One of her feed them. Because they're a human being that's hungry. Just feed them because you love them, right? And you know
her
how I feel
daughter
about
is
that,
clean right now as a
she is,
result
right.
of the way that she,
absolutely.
in the beginning of her journey, she was one of those, I'm not going to support you. I'm not going to enable you. I will give you no money. I will give you no phone. And what happened is she had a bad experience. She trusted all the people that were telling her, you can't support her addiction. You can't enable her. Tough love, tough love, tough love. She trusted those people and then sent her daughter to a treatment center where she was the victim of body brokers, right? And it changed her whole perspective on the way she dealt with her daughter. So every time she spoke to her daughter, instead of speaking to her addiction, she spoke to her as a person. And she just had regular conversations with her, but not about her addiction, because her daughter already knew she wanted her to get clean. So she just spoke to her. And eventually it worked. And her daughter is clean now, lives with her and her son. It's the most beautiful thing.
It really is. It really is. Yeah.
How do you spell her name? I'm trying to find her.
Brandy with an I and Mac with a C.
Yeah.
If you find her on TikTok, the Facebook, I think, might be a pirated account. I'm pretty sure it is, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
it's got like
Instagram
1,000
as well.
followers, right? Oh, okay. Yeah. And I suppose Instagram. Yeah. Right. So, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll find her.
Yeah. It's absolutely amazing. Right, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Listen, ladies, we've crossed over the hour mark. So as we tend to, I'm not surprised that the conversation's gone. I see your eyes light up there, Sonya, about daily gratitude. So that brings us to my favorite part of the show. That is the daily gratitudes. And well, let's start with you, Sonya. What you got?
Okay, so it's amazing that we are talking about this topic today and the gratitude that I want to share with you today. So, kind of a story. In 2016, I was living in a halfway house. I was not ready to get clean. My mom had custody of my kids at the time, and she came to visit me at the halfway house, right? And she was just in that struggle. She wanted it for me so much, but I wasn't ready, and that's just all that there was to it. I wasn't ready. It wouldn't be but a couple weeks later before I'd get kicked out of the halfway house for using. And when she came to see me, she brought this song that she had been listening to, and the name of the song was Trust in You. And it was just saying, like, I'm gonna trust in God's will. Like, even though I can't see it right now, I'm gonna trust that everything is gonna be okay, right? And so fast forward a couple years later, I get arrested, I'm in jail, and I was just in the darkest period of my life. And I heard another song, and the name of the song was Rescue. And I don't know if you guys have ever heard me share this part of my story, but it was like, I will rescue you. And I had this revelation that I hadn't been arrested. I had been rescued from the darkness that I was living in, because I was so scared back then to say I wanted help, to say I didn't want to be there. I knew I didn't want to be there, but when you're out there in the streets like that, you can't speak that. You have to be tough, you know? So I had this revelation when I was in jail that I had been rescued. And so that song got me through so much hard times. And last night, I got the person that sings both of those songs is the same woman. Last night, I went to a concert with my mom, and the woman that sang those songs was the concert that we went to. So she sang Trust in You and Rescue while I'm sitting there with my mom and my kids. And it just speaks to the fact, right, that however many years ago, 7 years ago, when she heard that song, she had no idea what would happen last night. She had no idea that I was going to be okay. She had no idea I was going to be in recovery, get my kids back. And then, 4 years ago, when I heard that song in jail, I thought I was going to prison. I thought it was over for me. That was nothing but a failure. That's all I would ever be. And then here we are, 4 years later, and I'm sitting in a concert with my mother and my children, and I'm listening to the song that changed my perspective on my recovery and on my life. And it just was such one of those full circle moments. And I felt so much gratitude. Yes. Oh, I cried. I cried.
I'm kind of trying not to right now, I'm going to be honest. So, yeah.
But it's that
That's
family
awesome.
member thing, right, that we're talking about. Like, she struggled so much, and she didn't do it perfectly. She made mistakes. She put me down sometimes. She shamed the addiction, and she gave me tough love, but she never gave up on me. And she always believed in me, and she always loved me. Nothing ever changed that. And although we struggled, we made it to the other side. And last night was one of those moments when we got to embrace that.
That's awesome.
Yeah. That's my gratitude.
Absolutely awesome. I see Lisa was tearing up a little bit there.
Wow. I just feel like I was like imagining myself in that moment, and just,
How
yeah,
can you
like,
not, right?
right? Like this full circle. It's like this full circle moment of like recovery and love and family and unity and support. That's awesome.
That really is. Lisa, what you got?
I am grateful that Sonya's here. I have told Chris that like we have a lot of great guests on this show, but there's something about you, Sonya, that just like speaks to me. It's the way you say things, the way you describe things. Like it just, I don't know, it just hits me differently. And so from that first episode when we had you on, like, when we wrapped up and Chris and I were speaking later, and I was like, that was just one of my favorite episodes, and you're one of my favorite people. And I'm just happy to know you. And I love that I get the privilege of getting to listen to you speak and hear your story and just hear your wisdom. And so I feel very grateful that I get to be here and do this with you again.
Thank you. And
Yeah.
actually, I'm very grateful too. We did like that first episode. I feel like we really had such a great connection and a great
Hmm.
conversation. And I've been looking forward to coming back on here with you guys for 6 months now, because it's actually been 6 months since the last time
Wow.
I was here. I know. But I
It's been
Really?
that
love these
long.
conversations and
Holy
I'm
cow.
grateful for
Hey.
it too. I know, right? It
Wow.
has.
Time
Jeez.
Time
flies.
flies.
No kidding, eh? So much has changed in 6 months, right? Yeah. Well, I guess, yeah, I've been here for 4 months now, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah, that adds up.
Yeah.
That adds up, eh?
Crazy.
Holy cow. Wow. Yeah. Okay. And for myself, um, so much. My dog is always in there now. Right? He's all I got
Sunny.
here. He's not all I have here, but he's the only physical thing I have every day in my life. The only, relationship, and I just love him so much. I don't know if you checked it out, Sonya, the Sonny in a Sidecar
I
page.
have, yes.
Yeah, yeah, right. Yeah, yeah. He's a little star around here now.
I
A little
noticed the
celebrity.
drone videos too. You just got like a drone that you did
Yeah,
some
so
like,
that's Mike Miller from the Outdoor Treatment Center.
I
He has a
love
film
that.
background too, right? He
That's
used to work
awesome.
for TSN actually. So yeah, he we busted out. He's got some really nice drones, right? So yeah, that was pretty cool.
So
There's a
cool.
bunch more footage there too that I get to play with once he sends it over to me. So yeah. Definitely thankful for that. I'm also thankful. I just, as we were sitting here recording, I just got another message from somebody who's the sibling of somebody that was lost, and who's actually writing a book called Ashes to Awesome. What are the odds of that? But and again, it's just kind of that weird coincidence that we're sitting
Yeah.
here talking about family, and then here she is, and of course with Lisa being a sibling and all of that. So looks like we're going to have her on the show. Uh, Most likely with you,
Awesome.
Lisa. Right? So yeah.
Yeah.
I just and for that message specifically, but all of the messages, right? Like I struggle. I struggle with so much, the financial side, all of those things, and validation of purpose is the thing that you need, right? And it just in all of those messages, all of those comments, that's one of my favorite comments ever on one of my, like if I see that on a reel or a meme, I'm like, I did it. If somebody just says this, right?
Yeah.
Right? Like, yeah, right? I nailed it. All of that stuff is just such a blessing, and I'm so thankful for that. I'm also grateful to every single person who continues to support us in any which way you're doing it, whether it's a like, a comment, a share, subscribe, the bottom, the buttons. Anytime you do any one of these things, you're getting me a little bit closer to living my best life. My best life is to continue making humble living, spreading the message. The message is this: if you're in active addiction right now, today could be that day. Today could be the day that you start a lifelong journey. Reach out to a friend, reach out to a family member, call into detox, go to a meeting, go to church, pray. I don't care. Do whatever it is you have to do to get that journey started, because it is so much better than the alternative. And if you have a loved one who's suffering an addiction right now, you're just taking the time to listen to another amazing conversation on the Ramble. If you could just take 1 more minute out of your day and text that person, let them know they are loved. Use the words.
You are loved.
That little glimmer of hope just might be the thing that brings them back.